Welcome, everyone, and happy Friday. Happy Good Friday, TGIF. Oh my God, it's been a long, long year already. Q1 of 2021 feels like Q5 of 2020 in a way. My name is Dalia El-Ghazar. Thank you for joining us. And we are here to throw some truth bombs and some wisdom at you in regards to virtual, in regards to life as an event organizer, to say what the heck is going on and try to answer some of the questions that you might have, or what is going on in your head and try to give you some sanity. We're going to try our best. But I am super, super excited because this doesn't happen often, people. I mean, I know that you see me on screen quite a bit and people are like, why are you all over the place? It's because we're on a mission to help people out. But I have Carolyn Clark, aka known as Clark the Shark, and you got to take this seriously. You'll know why. She is not really liking that I have her on screen, and especially on live stream. So I don't know what the repercussions are, but I already have a broken ankle, so I don't think she can do a lot worse to me. So there you go. So Clark the Shark from Vegas, Dalia from a bed in Boston, Mass. And we are here to take on any questions that you might have, as well as, again, like I said, we're going to throw truth bombs this Friday. So it's going to be a great Friday, not a good Friday, a great Friday. Carolyn, how are you today?
I'm great, Dalia. Thank you. You know, and you forgot to add in there that we are also testing the assumption that you should never hold a virtual event on a Friday afternoon before a holiday weekend. So, you know, if one person shows up, the assumption is true.
Yes. Yeah. So that's another truth bomb, right? Is to take a look at like calendars and say, oh, we should not double book on a public holiday. But here's the truth bomb. With everything going virtual, is there anything called a holiday anymore or a weekend anymore? Because I see a lot of shows happening around weekends. So maybe that's something we can address going forward. Don't you think?
Yeah, and I think definitely in like our medical, particularly our medical clients, everything is at night or on weekends, you know, because the docs are busy during the day. And so these organizations have found that the best way to reach these docs is at night and on weekends. So yeah, when we bring people onto our team, you know, the first thing you're telling them is like, so there really aren't any holidays, and sometimes you have to work at night and you have to work on weekends, because I mean, it's 24/7 these days, particularly from a global reach perspective as well.
Yeah, definitely.
It's really funny when I send my calendar to our clients. We're like, when can I book some time? And I send the calendar to them, and they're like, you start at 2:00 in the morning, you know?
It's like, well, that's because you don't sleep. So I think that was way before everything and the virtual mayhem that happened last year. So for those, and shame on them that don't know you, tell us a little bit about what you were up to, especially in the last decade, because this is very telling of this conversation that we're having right now.
Sure. Well, previously to joining Dalia at Dalia Plus, I was the Senior VP of Marketing at PCMA, which I think most people know what PCMA is, on it. And we had a trailblazing CEO at the time that, you know, believed in digital events, virtual, hybrid, and also believed that it should be in the marketing department, you know, on it. And I think that's more because our team was more tech savvy at the time, and platforms were much more complicated than they are today on it. And so when PCMA bought the Virtual Edge Institute, which became the Digital Experience Institute, that also came to the marketing department on it. So we've been producing virtual and hybrid events and education since, you know, she first got into that foyer in 2010. And the thing is, you know, she was coming from the the perspective of the recession from 2008, 2009, where attendance dove for live events. And, this was, her vision for this. And her co-CEOs all told her that she was going to cannibalize her face-to-face events, that this was the wrong thing to do, and really, sort of publicly shamed her for doing it. But that did not deter Deborah Sexton, and she just continued to raise the bar every year on the what we did and the engagement and how we expanded it and what the audience growth was. And then I just published an article on LinkedIn this week about this white paper that I wrote in 2017 that was called The Power of Digital Events. And, I had a great collaborator that worked for me, Jem King and Cush, and she worked on crunching all the data, that led to this white paper. And what we determined was, we planted a flag on every hybrid attendee that came from 2011 to 2016, and we followed them, and we followed what their purchase behaviors were and on it. And, we came back and we worked on this for a year behind our CEO's back, didn't tell her about it on it. And then we were like, come to her and we were like, could we have some time at the board meeting, and it was like, this is what we were going to present. And it was like, we brought $1 million of incremental revenue to PCMA from 2011 to 2016 through reaching people through virtual and hybrid events. And it was that they, they either became a member, or they attended and renewed their membership, or became started attending face-to-face, or they brought products and services from PCMA. So it was actually really a proof of that long game that we, expressed to people of like, virtual events is not a one-off. You're going to have your C-suite, and you're going to have your, your superiors tell you, all right, how do I pay for this one thing? We're going to have a virtual, or we're going to have a hybrid event, and it's got to pay for itself on it. And you have to go like, it builds, it's a long game. There are more things, you get more revenue from other sources than just, did I pay to attend that event, or did the sponsorship pay for the event as well?
And so along those lines, so a couple of things, and just FYI for everybody, we do have a wizard behind the scene, and that's Vivian Chan, who like the Dahlia Plus team cannot live without. So Vivian is going to share the link to the article that Carolyn wrote on LinkedIn, which has more than 7,000 views at the moment. And so you are able to download it and to take a read. But a couple of key points that Carolyn shared is the word cannibalization, because we talk to clients right now and they are still being told that they are cannibalizing their live events with their digital events, right? And so the other thing is the long game. And that is a big strategy move that a lot of planners are reluctant to take, even though in their heart and in their mind, they know they need to. It's just, how do they start having that conversation with their C-suite and their stakeholders? So from that, Carolyn, we're fast forwarding, in regards, this is like a decade later or 4 years after the paper was done. When we're talking to clients and when we're talking to organizers and we're seeing their, questions on forums and so forth, I'm gonna put down the truth bombs, and you're gonna do the words of wisdom, because I'm not gonna do F-bombs because you told me not to. But but the truth is, our organizers are very fearful at the moment, to a point where there's paralysis, to a point where they are not convinced of what they're doing makes sense, and they're not able to get the buy-in. That's the truth. That's a truth bomb from my side. What's words of wisdom do you have for them?
Well, one of the things is that decisions have to be stopped being made based on budgets alone on it. A lot of times we see this with our clients, Dahlia, you know this, is that, they're making decisions based on a budget constraint on it, rather than going in and determining what are the goals and objectives, what is the content strategy, what are the different audience verticals on it, and then, what's the technology that best supports that, and then how do you build revenue streams around that.
Yes.
On it. And so a lot of times we find, like, we'll come into clients and they're like, we purchased this license to this technology platform. And then you have to build everything around what the limitations of that technology, has. And oftentimes the license that they've been sold is doesn't really, satisfy the goals and objectives they have for the events. So then you have to sort of punt and work around it on it. And the other thing too is, we find like we get called in because an organization has bought a license, and then they have to do everything in-house, and they don't have the skill set in-house,
Right.
to be able to do those things as far as design the event, adjust the content, because usually you're dealing with people that have always, developed live content, which we all know people have shorter attention spans.
Yep.
You have to have different content for different audiences as well. And, how do you facilitate networking? And so they don't have like that skill set in-house and have to end up third partying. Well, the CEO, when they made the decision on the technology platform based on price, didn't factor that into it, and just thought, because some of them are all telling them, you just, you can do everything in-house.
True. Well, you leapfrogged on a couple of my truth bombs, but we're gonna get to that, especially on the tech side. No, you shouldn't be sorry. Are you kidding? Because these are all things that happen very quickly. Questions being asked very quickly, mentally, within an organizer's mind as well as within the team. But so let's start from the very beginning, as they say in The Sound of Music. So the first truth bomb is basically where you have an organizer, and I will give them credit that last year they upped their game very quickly because they had to on the digital side, right?
Absolutely.
And it's a different skill set. We've seen it being addressed, all of that. But the truth bomb is when you get handed from a client or a prospect, even just for budgeting purposes or from a strategy, or like, how much is this going to cost from a production side, when they're handing you over a strategy that they built or created for a live event that they had, or a run of show, and they say, this has to be done in a virtual manner or as a digital event, let alone hybrid, because we're not even going to get there because we can't. There's not enough time. We might be another session. But so when someone comes and hands you over a strategy that was meant for a live event and a run of show, what's the word of wisdom there for them?
Well, that happened frequently last year. That people were like, here is my live program and this is what I want to produce on it. And, we, one of the things that when people really started coming to us for production and strategy on virtual events was that they didn't understand. We severely underestimated how much time we were going to have to spend educating our clients on it, because if this was new to them and they just thought that they could take their live event and it would become virtual on it, which again, we had one client that gave us a program and it was like back-to-back 90-minute plenaries, right, on it. And you're like, there's no way, people are going to turn off. You've got to give them breaks, because people had kids at home, they had, they were going to go make their lunch in their kitchen, and you have to understand that there's shorter attention spans. And I think most of the audience understands that now, right, is that you've got to give them, shorter sessions, and you have to give them the ability to, have the meet in the hallway type engagements where they can run into people and they can still have that engagement with people on it. And well, and the other thing is like their expo hall, right? And their sponsors, they all had booths in the past. And so they didn't do a lot of advanced marketing for those. They would just be like, make sure to go to the expo hall, right? And now you have to give attendees incentives to go to the expo hall, to visit the sponsor booths on it. And then you also have to educate those exhibitors and those sponsors to offer incentives for people to come visit them. You know,
Yeah.
so it's a very different situation, you know, for
It
those.
totally is, and I agree with you. So one thing that's also so two things, like you're saying, the amount of time that people are dedicating to planning virtual, they're underestimating it. And then second is the amount of time that they are dedicating to educating their stakeholders, like their attendees, like their sponsors, their exhibitors, their speakers, is a lot of time. And what they are trying to do is they're trying to do it all. That's one. And they're also trying to do it on their own. And, you know, obviously budget is a question, but it's like, it is a different skill set. It's like training the trainer, but it's also at a point where businesses and professionals, their way of behaving or acting in the virtual world is very different than in the hallways or near the coffee machines, or, you know, and I also, I'm going to throw it out there. It's like you said, you need to know your audiences, but I am also getting worried about not enough attention being given to the first timers that came to your virtual show last year. What are you going to do for them this year? Because they don't know people. There's no buddy system. As I was on a expo chat on Wednesday, and where we're like, well, maybe virtual first timers need a buddy system, or maybe exhibitors and sponsors need to spend more time, you know, reaching out to the first timers and creating those relationships so that it's a nice transition when they do go live, if they go live, because a virtual audience can just stay as a virtual audience, and you have to address that. But so it's also the time, like you said, of training the internal team, right? And that's a must-have at the moment.
Yeah, you know, particularly last year, like I said, when we spent a lot of time educating people because they didn't have the skill set. And as you complimented them earlier, people spent a lot of time investing in understanding platforms and going to a lot of virtual events like this one and understanding what they needed to do. And so today we don't have as many questions, you know, from new clients as we do, you know, and our continuing clients are much smarter about what they do. But there's still that model from the live side, particularly in the association world, where people have committee chairs and they have volunteer committees, and they're going like, we want to do this. And, you know, from a live perspective, maybe you just always followed them and said, okay, sure, we'll make that happen on it. But in a virtual world, sometimes what they want to do is not best suited for the technology on it. And then it comes across as a poor production value on it. And when we recommend, we do all kinds of recommendations going, that's not a good idea, here's a better way to do it. But they don't want to push back on those committee chairs and volunteer leaders because they've never done it in the past on it. So you have to spend some time with those folks now, sort of educating them on what the technology does to best facilitate what they want to do, and so the organizers have to educate their stakeholders as well.
Right. Cece, how many times have you done Zoom school for clients?
A number of times on it.
And that's a thing. This is not about just like finding the mute button. With all the updates, it's a thing, isn't it?
Well, you know, one of our clients, we were having a debrief from an event like that does events on Zoom, was like, can you tell us what Zoom has coming up, what new features we can use? And I was like, well, let's see, this year they've already done 6 updates already. And a lot of times the update is fixing the bugs from the last update on it. But, it's not like Zoom publishes like here's what's going to happen and here's what we're working on in the future. And here's when these releases are going to be, because they're testing them on it. So a lot of times it's, we're like giddy children because, an update comes out. One came out this week and it'll be like, this new feature is added. And then immediately our team gets on and tests it, to determine whether it's something that, we can tell our clients about, like, here's a new way to do this.
Yeah. I mean, and it's needed too, because so this goes back to not only depending on the technology, everybody thinks that they can figure out Zoom and just buy a license and let's just do it. But it's also of what it's upping the bar and making sure that the people that are on it know how to use it so that they can maximize. It sounds like a very basic 101 or trivial thing, but it is real. It can like make or break your event as well as the experience. So my next truth bomb is I see a lot of organizers and planners that are, and I don't know if this is a post-pandemic thing or what, where they are micromanaging like nobody's business, more so now than ever. And it is like paralyzing sometimes, where their teams are just like not wanting to take decisions and they're just waiting for someone else to tell them how to do it, when to do it, and taking orders. And the micromanagement, I don't think lives within when you're doing virtual events.
Now, what we see frequently is that, and because maybe this works well for the live event side of our business on it, but what we see is very siloed approaches. So when you're doing a live event, right, there's usually like this one person's in charge of, food and beverage, and they do all the BEOs. And then one person's in charge of room sets, and working with your decorator, to lay those out on it. And the one person's working on the trade show. Well, what happens with virtual and hybrid events both is that you can't work in silos, right? Because the technology is all so integrated, is that one is dependent on the other, and the other has to understand, to achieve my goals, I need this to happen. I need this to happen on it. And what you said is sometimes you find that nobody wants to take, responsibility for it. Right. They don't want to take the lead or they don't want the accountability for it. And then it ends up messy, because then when you're putting the event together, then you have all these siloed things, and what one person wanted now deters from what the other person wanted, from the technology side of it. So I one of the things I talk about frequently is that people do not understand the length of time that it takes to plan a virtual event because of the technology side of it, because of like all the integration that requires from all the different team members on it, because they're used to doing it a certain way live. And they also, most of these people have been in the live business for a long time. And so they can do it in their sleep, how to do it. And this is a completely new skill set. And so they're having to learn, they're having to adjust, learn to align with each other. So it takes more time on it. Yeah. It's really funny. Well, just one of our medical meeting clients that I was talking to yesterday, is planning their annual event, for live for this fall on it. And they were talking about the fact that virtual, they actually recognize that virtual takes longer, time to plan and has more complexities to it, than the live event for them.
And I mean, it's going to get even more so. And this is where I see actually some organizations where they are bringing almost 2 different teams with 2 different leaders or co-leaders that are going to be taking on the live event versus a digital event. and not to light any fire under anybody's butts, but I'm going to, is when you say it's the long game, this is not about planning one annual to another anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if your 70 webinar Zoom conferences or summits that you did last year in order to stay in touch with your audiences were, had raving reviews, and you spent a ton of time on them, and you don't want to lose that audience, you're going to have to figure out a way how to build those events in your long game strategy. It's going to have to be sort of like, woven together. And I would not want anybody to put it on a team of 1.5 people to say you're going to be handling everything as well as the live. It's because it's going to be a little bit too much. So a couple of comments that I wanted to address, and questions actually. So Olivia loves the idea of the buddy system. Thank you, Olivia. So that whole buddy system idea is really to see if we can get, even if you get like peer-to-peer buddies together, or if it's someone that is live and you do have a digital event happening at the same time, then maybe you can have, different types of attendees be buddies. Or it's also exhibitors taking on, buddies of new first-time attendees, etc. And then Roseanne has a question. How do you convince speakers that they need proper lighting, second only to good audio?
Well, one of the things, and if anybody wants this, you enter your email address to us, or direct message us, is that we put together a whole speaker toolkit for folks on it, and it goes through like examples of it, because again, and it's even like it goes so far as to detail like how to download the latest update of Zoom on it. But we're like, don't have open windows behind you, put a light in front of you on it. But it's so they have a toolkit that they get in advance from us that addresses every possible issue that they might think about from their presentation standpoint. But then in the tech rehearsals, it's the same way on it. You're like, you have a shadow on your face, there's a window behind you, there is, and you go through them. And again, the speakers have gotten better over the last year, because I've probably said those words like several hundred times on it. And so they now understand, what they have to be. And, one of the bigger things when last spring and summer that it started is like everyone was at home. And so their family was also working on their Wi-Fi at the same time. And so it would drag their Wi-Fi speed down, and then they would start to buffer on it. And so that was something else you have to test with speakers as well. And you have to tell them to go and, kick off their other housemates.
Their kids off of Nintendo Switch?
Yeah, well, or gaming. And so we actually had one of our speakers that was for a medical meetings evening event hide her kids' gaming consoles, so that they wouldn't. Have you done that? Wouldn't be on it, but you're going like, so I think that's something people understand a little bit more now, as well. But it is, and we've actually, when somebody has like a not too recent webcam on it, we've actually emailed, or mailed, thank you, Amazon.com, webcams to people that are of higher quality so that they have a better video on them. A lot of people are sending out even speaker kits now that have a microphone and have a webcam on it, and some of those things that can also be offered as branding opportunities, because if you put the organization's name on it, and then,
that's a brilliant idea.
Yeah, that they have that as well. I mean, Dahlia, you were on an event where they sent you a laptop, Yes,
I was at Evolve 2.0 with SwapCard, and Rachel Stefan also, and they sent us speaker kits, everything from the ring light to the laptop to the camera to the microphone. I will tell you, if you want to keep it professional and you want to send your speakers something like that, make sure that FedEx gets it right, because it took me a ton of time trying to send it back. So I'm just saying, the whole experience was amazing, but you have to think of it from start to finish. I do love the idea, Carolyn, about like branding or using it as a sponsorship opportunity where you have your speakers get, branded mics and branded webcams, for example. But Roseanne, just to answer your question, it is truly an educational curve because not all speakers know what the best audio or the best video camera would be. I'm going to take it a step further, and I'm going to say that, and we're actually doing this with a client right now, where we are helping them design better content and templates. And the reason for that is because in the last year, everybody that and it used to be everybody thinks they're a marketer, right? Now everybody thinks that they can critique content because they've seen so many speakers, they've seen so many TV shows and productions. So this is where you need to go back to the speakers, and they need to be part of the production, and they have to up their game. But you have to help them up their game, and they have to have skin in the game. So I've seen speaker contracts change. I've seen speaker contracts actually include that the templates are going to be different. The delivery is going to be different, more interactive. It's not going to be like a talking head anymore. I know that Carolyn is giving our speaker kit or the guide. I'm surprised you're doing that without asking them to do something. I would ask them to like send in a selfie or something before they can just get the kit. I mean, you need to have them do something. They can't just do it, like get it with an email address. You're too nice, Carolyn. That's what I'm saying. But anyway,
we're here about helping everyone raise the bar.
Okay, I'm just joking. All right, so what else can we discuss? So another truth bomb, where a planner or an organizer says, guess what? We're doing everything in-house, and our team is going to take it on. We have a contract in hand of the best and the most like popular tech platform out there, and we are just gonna do it on our own. You've seen that happen.
I yes, and my response is go with God. Yeah. But as you're aware, we've had people come back to us and go, we were wrong. We need some help on it. Yeah. And, you lose a couple months of time, for the pre-production schedule side of it on it. And it becomes very much a crunch, right? But it is, I mean, some people do have the skill sets on site, but many of them don't on it. And I mean, we produce something, and Zoom, you'd think everyone knows how to work on Zoom now, right? But our team produces something on Zoom for someone every week, right? Because of the production value, that we can bring to it. And so that there's a quality to it and sometimes we always have 2 producers on, sometimes we have 3, sometimes we have 5, depending upon what they're trying to do, so that it isn't just haphazard, right? And that the Zoom experience is actually a quality experience for people.
Right. And I love the idea of go with God, because I've seen ugly crying in many forms. I've seen the consumption of wine and chocolate like go up the roof. And actually that's something that needs to be addressed, because there's nothing wrong with that, but it's from the team members and also the organizer when they're like, what the hell did we get ourselves into? Now, a couple of things. Having the belief and having the trust in your team that they can handle something like this, 100%, you should do that. But they don't know what they don't know. And there's a lot of moving parts versus a live event. We all know what live event planning is like. When it comes to virtual, totally different ball game. But most importantly, it's not only the platform, it's not only putting a run of show together that looks really good on paper, it's having someone understand what the production time and effort and what the realism is going to be like, as well as, being devil's advocate or helping you create better ideas, better experiences that you might not have thought of. And I think this is where production team and having a management team is a bigger priority than just a technology or anything like that put in place. And a lot of wine and chocolate, that too. So that is a must. So Peggy has a question about engagement. And the truth bomb here is, a lot of times people think, oh, the engagement is just going to be everybody chatting and, maybe a couple of Q&A questions, maybe a couple of polls. So how is engagement defined, and how is it different now than it is in a live event?
Again, when we've talked about people's shorter attention spans, right? Mm-hmm. And engagement has to be, in some sense, bringing people, having shorter sessions, but also having that opportunity for them to participate in the conversation. So whether you're crowdsourcing at the beginning so that the content is more customized to what that particular participant is seeking, or it's having enough breaks to go, like, let's have a little fun in between here. Now everybody get up and stretch, get up and dance. It's integrating music, just like you would in a live event, into your virtual event as well. And it's also those things that used to happen organically at live events, accommodating those on it. So think about at every live event, you'd have some kind of meetup. Somebody would arrange something. There would be something over here. And so you have to, as an organizer, think about that and go, mm-hmm. How do I accommodate that type of engagement that people seek from live events, and put them into our virtual or hybrid events? And for Peggy, you saying that, how is it different than 5 years ago? Well, 5 years ago, most virtual events were, a webinar that was like one way being talked at, and now we have evolved in the sense of it's like having a conversation with the audience, and letting them actually feel a part of that. And then having fun, having a way for them to connect with other people on it. Some of the platforms out there do have like matchmaking pieces to it, connection pieces to it. Some of them don't, but then they have the ability to integrate maybe a third party connection piece into it. And you can facilitate that, but it's all, some of the matchmaking ones will be like, here's a good person based on the way that you responded and built your profile. Here's somebody you should talk to, and here's somebody you might be interested in. What I don't think has happened yet from the supplier side is that they're still trying to sell to you. Right. They're using that connection platform to go. I was on a recent event once, a couple weeks ago, and the technology platform, I filled out my profile, did all this other stuff, and 4 different suppliers from the same company reached out to me and said, I'd like to talk to you. And I was like, actually, I'm friends with one of your founders, and I'm all good,
I think I know that one. I know that.
You probably do. You probably do. Because, I have a crush on the
yes,
the founder.
We're not gonna. I now I know who it is.
Yes, you do. Okay. Audit. But that engagement has to, we've had, talk about the sangria, that's a great, engagement.
Viv, you gotta share the Drag Taste website with everybody, because talk about like an experience and a holy cow moment, and surprise and delight and the engagement part. And they actually, so even if you don't drink alcohol, but this is drag queens from Portugal that share how to make sangria, and you can have non-alcoholic sangria, but the whole experience is a lesson in engagement and networking more than anything. And for those that are in the stream that have experienced it, which I know that the D Plus squad has, but it was the number one networking experience, rated networking experience for Web Summit. And Peggy, I know that one of your questions was, have you seen any events or trade shows that are out there that are great examples? The great examples are ones that use these amazing new ideas. And I have to tell you, kudos to all the creativity that's happening right now with all the experiences. Paulina, who's also listening in, had experience with AR and with holograms and with karaoke and a lot of dancing on stage in a recent event that she did. What you need to understand is, how do you blend that in to the event strategy? How do you blend that into the production plan? And more importantly, how do you promote it so that everybody doesn't miss it? And how do you want them to act with it? Do you want them to make it viral? Do you want them to participate? Do you want them to take pictures of them dancing in the kitchen? Because I have a lot of those from team members, with the drag queens. But what I'm trying to say is, all of the design elements has to have a call to action, which brings us back to marketing as a truth bomb. So that's my next truth bomb before we go into tech and take a couple of questions. When it comes to marketing, the truth bomb is, for some reason, there are organizers that think they can stick to the marketing plan and tactics that they did with their live event for their virtual event, and they still speak within their marketing as if they have no competition, that they still have brand loyalty, and just do cookie cutter, let's cut and paste emails from 2 years ago and use them again. That's my truth bomb.
Well, I'm sure everyone who has put on a virtual event knows, is that people register a lot later for virtual events than they do live events.
Right.
Typically, for a live event, organizations would open registration 6 to plus months, ahead of time, and a lot of the philosophy was, if we hold it, they will come, right? And because maybe their content wasn't solidified yet, and it was just like, this is going to be fabulous, you must be there on it. And I think as Destinations International has proven, is like the number one reason people attended an event, was the location, of the event on it. And so some of those decisions are made up front. It's like, this organization has a reputation for good content, and plus it's going to be in San Diego, and I want to go spend some extra time on the beach, and so they would book. Well, virtual events, as we've talked about, people don't necessarily take that planning portion of it ahead of time. They don't know what their content is very far in advance on it, and so they they just go like, hey, it's going to be great on it, and nobody's going to register that because they don't have a reason to register, because it's online, it's not a destination, I don't know what I'm going to learn yet on it. And so you have to be much more cognizant that people are looking for specific educational opportunities. They're looking for specific networking opportunities on it. And that has got to be weaved into your marketing. As I talked about earlier too, with your exhibitors and your sponsors, you've got to put them in your marketing now,
right,
on it, because those people are like, how am I going to get a return on my investment with you on it? How, if people are not going to be walking down the hallway beside me, how do I make sure that they're going to make the time to come and talk to me? And that's what I was talking about. You have to put that incentive into your marketing and promote those people of like why participants should spend time with them as well. And I think I've preached this to so many of our clients, and then they get busy and they don't make the time to do it. And then they come back and go like, well, our exhibitors weren't happy with the traffic.
Right.
but we've got, but there are some people that do it right on it, and they get the exhibitors involved in like pre-promotional marketing for them on it. There's a number of tools out there that will help them do that on it. They send social toolkits out to people and try to get that excitement around it, that that the exhibitor can actually go out and expand their audience to the traditional event audience to their audiences, and have greater reach with that on it. But the messaging is, again, it's all digital, so it has to be quick. You can't have this long, like, here's everybody that's attending the show on it. And it's got to be like, here are one-of-a-kind benefits for me, right. And sometimes that requires vertical messaging in your marketing, right? A supplier is going to have different reasons to attend than an attendee is. And in the past focus, maybe it was all about, hey, attendee, this is what's great, and the supplier's going to come because they want to meet potential buyers, at this event. Well, now you have to give suppliers reasons, to attend, because
absolutely. I mean, to a point where, and like you said, the lead time, especially for registration, is changing. And the plan has to change accordingly as well, where I've seen that the marketing, the incentives have become bigger when it's closer to event. And sometimes it's not even rate related. And if anybody is still doing free reg for their events, you need to talk to us, because that's a no-no. We're not doing that anymore. So you need to charge. So that's
people are also registering while the program is going on,
right?
Which is actually not something maybe that is happens in a live event, because they can't, travel to a live event there. So you also have to have somebody dedicated to registration the entire, mm-hmm. if it's a multi-day event, because you're having people register, on it. I remember for PCMA, for our hybrid event, we would get 300 plus people registering on the first day on it. And you've got to deal with processing those registrations and getting everybody, directed to the event at that point. But, our clients, the same thing. It was like, we had an event in September where somebody registered 20 minutes before the end of the last day on it. And you're like, okay, come see the closing remarks. But I mean, this is a reality of what happens now.
Absolutely. And, so the incentives, be creative with the incentives. The incentives can be content related, meaning that you give content and you upsell with that, or you give them VIP hours with certain speakers, for example. The creativity when it comes to registration is a definitely different revenue stream and a business model that a lot of organizers have yet to crack, basically. And it's tied into the existing organization's business models. It's tied into marketing. It's tied into your event design, as well as your website design. And mm-hmm. this is a segue to technology. So like right now, and you said it in the very beginning, right now, organizers, this is my truth bomb, are creating or designing an experience within a black box. There used to be a British sitcom called IT Crowd, and she used to describe the internet being in a black box, and that they broke the black box, and that's why the internet was down. And so like now we have these virtual platforms and people are buying it. They don't know what they're buying. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors. There's a lot of platforms that are great. There's a lot of platforms that are not great. And yet they design within that box, if you will. Mm-hmm. And they can't think beyond that box. So I think that's a deterrent for them. It's a huge limitation, especially if the black box breaks, because there's been epic fails, mm-hmm. Like a lot. And I don't know why there's no awards for the epic fails, but that's a different conversation. I think there should be.
You know, no one wants to talk about those in public.
I know, but it's lessons learned though. You don't have to talk about the platform, and you don't necessarily have to say, oh, it's this event. Maybe attendees can talk more about this, in regards to their experience. That makes sense versus the organizer. I know organizers don't want egg on their face. Mm-hmm. And this is where taking a look at the technology, in my opinion, should not be done alone anymore or within an internal team.
So let's talk about one of our epic fails, right? And that is we did a governance meeting in a live streaming platform, right? Mm-hmm. And as I think most people know now, live streaming has latency to it. And so usually it's, normally it's like 12, 15, 20 seconds of latency. So where it goes from where the content's being created, packs up, goes across the internet, unpacks into the live streaming platform, right? Well, when you're doing a governance meeting, you've got all kinds of people on all kinds of different devices. Some people are on really old laptops. Some people are in their car on the phone. Some people are in tablets. And some people have really bad Wi-Fi. And all of that exponentially increases the live stream. Right. So in a governance scenario, when you're having live voting, right? And in the live stream, you put it up and you go like, here's the item to vote on, and the board has to vote yes or no on it. Well, you're not going to sit there for 3 minutes and wait for people to catch up, because you aren't thinking. Like, latency should only be like 20 seconds, and they accommodated for that. But we had people that said that their latency was as long as 3 minutes on it, and so the repair to that was simply to go to, migrated it to Zoom, or the organization did, because Zoom sometimes has a little hesitancy to it, mm-hmm. But not like live streaming does. And so from their perspective, doing a governance meeting in real time, on it wouldn't matter what device the person was on, or what type of Wi-Fi that they had, and that's how they achieved it. So I mean, that's a lesson learned out of it.
Well, it's lesson learned, but it's also worst case scenario planning. So like a plan A is you have the live streaming platform as planned. Then you have to have a backup plan just in case that doesn't work, kind of thing. And that is something that I would be interested to know how many organizers have a plan B or a plan C, just in case that their platform goes kaput. And we've been there. So
Dahlia, look in the chat though. When you were talking about if you're not charging, you should. Somebody's asking about that whole approach of like pay what you can.
Yeah, and so I was just gonna say, Roseanne, in regards to pay as you can, that becomes part of your registration or revenue strategy, meaning that if you are able to do it where the attendees, and it could be by attendee type, but this is where you need to flesh out what your registration is going to be like, and like what kind of data you have or what you are collecting in regards to that attendee type. So you can have it where they're paying what they can. It can be by attendee type, for example. It can also be that they pay what they can, and then there might be also another complimentary payment, or like a scholarship, for example, in regards from a sponsor or exhibitor perspective. So like if you think of your sponsors, don't think of them as just booths anymore. That's not the case. Think of them as they are paying forward, they are empowering, your brand, they're bringing in new attendees. They have to have skin in the game. And so like there's a whole new strategy that you can have with your sponsors, having the attendees pay what they can, especially those that are going through hardships, and then making sure that the sponsors and those brands that want to help out are celebrated, are amplified, and are known that they are helping in that way as well, if that makes sense. And so the other question is about data, and I know that this is a big one in regards to data and analysis and all of that. And I do know for a fact that clients tried really, really hard to gather as much data points as they can so that they can set KPIs and benchmarks for their virtual events, because they were starting at zero. They didn't have that information. And so Rachel's asking, data and behavior tracking is vital. How do you find planners and tech are tapping into that gold mine now versus before? So how's the data analysis going now, Carolyn, versus
Yeah,
before?
I think, this is but event organizers don't usually have the talent on their team that synthesizes data, right? So they have an IT department that does that. And then there's a number of third parties out there. Like, we've partnered with Bear Analytics before on it that mine that data with you and come back and give you the insights of that data. I think, Rachel, it's a key question, that organizers don't even know to do. But I mean, we're giving people reports and data back on the virtual events we do. But honestly, I don't think they're looking at it. They don't know what to do with it. And it's another sort of task that's been put on their already full plate. I mean, if they're smart, they're bringing their IT departments, or if they're lucky enough to have a data analyst on it, or even hiring a third party to look at that data and tell them what they should do with it. Now, when you get that data, what the end result is that there's more work involved, based on what you learn from the data, because now you're going like, if you divide it into personas, or you divide it into different vertical markets, that means like I've got to talk to all these different, personas or markets in a different way. And so then that is more work on it. A couple of years ago, everybody's like, oh, data. And then there was such a flood of data and nobody knew what to do with it on it. So, even if you have it in-house, that's great. If not, we really recommend that you bring one of these third parties. I mean, and there's quite a number of them in the event sector that know how to synthesize your data, collect your data, synthesize it, and then come back to you with insights and action items.
Yeah. I think that's spot on. I do think that this is a weak point for many organizations, as well as it's something that needs to be looked at from a different lens, quite like very, very different lens. So last truth bomb is, now that live events are coming back, we're going to ditch our digital events and not do virtual anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Smart move? Is that a smart move?
Yeah, no, that's not a smart move. Through all of these lessons over, the top 10 something years that I've been doing this, is that there are always going to be people that are not going to come to your event.
True.
In the past, it was like they either didn't know about you, or they were unable to travel, or they couldn't afford it financially. And now the other factor that has gotten into that mix is that people have become comfortable with virtual. I've heard people say, like, I'm never traveling to an event ever again, out loud. And what has happened over the last year is organizers have been able to grow their audiences because they've extended their reach. Because, there's people in Portugal now that never heard of them before, and is now a passionate fan, of that organizers' events on it. And so you have to understand that, virtual is here to stay on it, even though I was preaching that in 2017 and people are like, oh, okay. But it is here to stay. And that people have gotten, like, this last year to understand what the value of virtual, now hybrid events, are going to be. And, I put this in my LinkedIn article, a cautionary tale is, just because everybody's like, oh, there's so much pent up demand on it. And if you have a banner first live in-person event, right, that doesn't mean that you should be abandoning your virtual and hybrid strategy, because there's still all those people that are out there on it. And it's not just you. They've got competitors. You have competitors. You have competitors now that you never even heard of a year ago out there vying for your same audience. And so it's the content that's there. And if you aren't going to offer a virtual opportunity for those people, then these new competitors you have are going to offer it. And then you're going to lose that person on it because of various different reasons why they can't participate face to face.
Perfect. So Carolyn, you did the last truth bomb. Boom, right there. And it's a wrap. So this has been fantastic. I saw in the comments that someone said part 2, let's talk about hybrid. So you and I have to chat about doing a part 2. I saw you roll your eyes, but this is good. This is good for everybody. But thank you everyone for your questions. If we haven't gotten to your questions, we're going to get to them, promise. And thank you for hanging out with us on this actually great Friday. Carolyn, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And this has been fantastic. And we hope to see you again with more truth bombs coming your way, but not today. We're good today. All right. Thank you.
All right. Happy Easter, everyone.
Ciao.